The Chiefs own the top seed in the AFC playoff picture no matter what happens here today, but we do have a chance to spoil things for the Denver Broncos. We are 2 hours from kickoff. You've waited all week for this very moment. It's finally here. It is time for football in Chiefs Kingdom. Let's do this. My name is Matt McMullen, joined by voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. This is Field Pass, presented by StorageMart. And Mitch, this game doesn't mean much for the Chiefs in terms of the standings, but it still has meaning in a bunch of ways.
A lot of ways, and not often you get to play Cousin Eddie and ruin the celebration. But the Chiefs have been here before. Remember 2013, had a shot at knocking the Chargers out of the playoffs last year to beat the Chargers with a day like today. So, yeah, there's a lot of reasons, and a lot of players, I know we'll bring it up, that get a chance to take responsibility, be in roles in a real-world situation that sets them up potentially for the future.
Well, let's talk about how this game impacts the AFC playoff picture because things could get weird today. So if the Broncos win this game, they're in. They're the 7th seed in the AFC. But if Denver loses, things indeed get weird because the Dolphins are playing the Jets at the same time here today. And if they win and the Broncos lose, the Dolphins are in and the Broncos are out. And if the Broncos and Dolphins both lose, the Bengals are in. So it's all to say there's a lot riding on this game here today for some other teams.
Well, people have said this is the 3rd straight week that Broncos have had the win and in scenario.
Yeah.
And they've lost to 2 good teams who had to make good plays to beat them, including the Bengals in overtime. But no one's talking about the Dolphins. Have you noticed that?
Nobody.
No one. And if the Chiefs pull off this upset, it'll be a bad day for the home team. But the Dolphins beat the Jets, they get in. So the Dolphins are very much in this conversation.
And this is like a playoff game for the Broncos.
Yeah.
They have to win. I think this is the biggest game for them in like 10 years since Super Bowl 50. What do you think?
I think it's very accurate, and they've had 7 straight losing seasons. Here's where the pressure, if the Chiefs put pressure on them, there's double and triple pressure because of that. It is the longest string in NFL history of a Super Bowl champion that didn't make it back to the playoffs. So we're talking from the 2015 season until now that they've not been in. And that, again, is the longest run by a team that won the Super Bowl not to make it back into the playoffs. So they know that. And if the Chiefs there's more pressure here than even just trying to win this game and get in because you have the historic pressure with it.
And we'll see if they feel that pressure here today. Now, you might have noticed we don't have any like music or graphics or B-roll here today. It's because of the weather back home, the people that do all those things for us. We didn't want them driving into the control room today at the stadium. So shout out to Anna Topkin. She's running the show from her living room at home with her kids running around. Thank you, Anna. This will be a shorter show today, but we are going to talk about why this game matters for us.
Can we give a shout out to Danny Lexa, who made the beauty shot pan?
We had to add a pan. We had to have something.
Oh my gosh, it was so amazing.
Amazing work, Danny, on the pan.
One of the franchise heroes.
Now, the first and most obvious point today, it's a great opportunity for some players that don't normally play a whole lot. And I'll give you an example from last year. It's Chamari Connor. Now, we talked about this on our podcast earlier this week. I'll reiterate it. Chamari had never played more than 32 defensive snaps in a game going into Week 18 last season, which was a similar situation for us where the starters weren't really playing. He played over 70 snaps in that finale, though, and you might think, whatever, doesn't really matter. Well, 2 weeks later, Mike Edwards got hurt on the very first defensive snap of the game against the Bills in the playoffs. Chamari goes in there and plays a ton and plays well. Have to imagine his experience in Week 18 helped him, don't you think?
No question, and it actually set up decision-making in the offseason for 2024 because they moved on from L'Jarius Sneed and actually put Chamari Connor into that L.J. Sneed role for the most part. And so, it really set up a run for Chamari Connor to lead into 2024 as well as the 23 playoffs.
Now, this is also a chance for the coaches to experiment and tinker with roles here today. We saw that with the offensive line last year. Things got real weird with the offensive line last year. Saw Creed Humphrey playing guard in that game, Juwan Taylor playing some left tackle. But the two that really stood out to us, and also talked about this on our podcast earlier this week, Joe Thuney played 18 snaps at left tackle in Week 18 last year, and Mike Caliendo played 50 snaps at left guard in that game. I think we're clearly seeing the benefit of that experiment now.
I went back and watched that game. Joe Thuney made the key blocks to get Blaine Gabbert on his scramble runs. And Joe played 4 snaps early at left tackle. Then he left, came back for a little bit at guard. But he came back at the crux of the game for 14 left tackle snaps. Caliendo was at left guard. It basically was the prophecy of what has happened in the 3 games in 11 days when it was those two manning the left side and yielding only 1 sack against 3 of the top pass rushing teams in the league. Where did that start? The genesis of that? The alpha point was that Week 18 game against the Chargers a year ago.
Now, we have the inactives. Before we jump into those, because it is kind of fun seeing all these big names on the inactives list, give me an offensive player you're excited to watch here today.
To me, because coming out of the clear blue sky would be, well, there's several actually. Nico Remigio will be one of the more targeted wide receivers in this game. But then on the offensive line, I'm very intrigued to see a couple of things. One, DJ Humphries will play left tackle. What's he got? Can he play the whole game against a really good defense? But then Kingsley Suama'atia, if he moves around, it could be similar to what we just mentioned long term. So that's on the offensive side. It could be a big day for Nico Remigio.
I'm going to add C.J. Hansen as well.
Love it. I love that.
Yeah, C.J. was our 7th-round pick out of Holy Cross this year. Has not played a snap yet, I don't think. He's going to make his NFL debut here today, and that's pretty cool. So happy for C.J. Hansen. How about on defense? Who are you watching today?
Jaden Hicks. Jaden Hicks becomes the Shamari Connor of a year ago. The analogy that you gave, or the example you gave, the analogy is Jaden Hicks. He actually becomes Justin Reed in this game. So not only is he playing as a third safety like he's done all year, and we've seen him emerge, right? His plays last week against Pittsburgh or a week and a half ago. But now all of a sudden he becomes the focal point of the defensive secondary in the role that he will have in this game today. And so this could be the genesis of something much bigger in the days and years ahead for a guy like Jaden Hicks.
Love that one. I think I'd add Joshua Uche as well. We acquired Joshua, of course, halfway through the year. Hasn't played a whole lot defensively for this team, but he'll have a shot here today. All right, so here's the inactives, Mitch. Take a look at those.
Boy.
So keep in mind, if a player is active, that doesn't mean he's going to play. Might not play a whole lot, but we also don't have preseason rosters here. Some starters will have to play at least a little bit, but at least so far, here are the inactives for today's game. Isaiah Pacheco, Patrick Mahomes, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Jawan Taylor, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones. They're all inactive here in this game. There were several players listed as doubtful coming in, too, like kind of coaches' reasons. Guys like Drew Tranquill, Justin Reed, Nick Bolton, Kareem Hunt. I doubt we see much of those guys at all here in this game, but there you go. There's our list of inactives.
Yeah, but let's, plain and simple here. Sometimes I scoot my game day setup that you're up there with me in the booth, and I just put it out there on X. Plain and simple, very clear here. The Chiefs came here to win this game.
Yeah.
Andy Reid made that very clear to me on Monday morning, and kind of wanted that message out to everyone, even though those guys are inactive that you just mentioned, and there'll be some others that won't play much. They'll still play some because of the numbers. You've got to play them. This is not a third preseason game. You don't have 90 guys. You're basically going to play this game with about 40 dudes. Andy Reid came here to win the game. Carson Wentz came here to win the game. It's very plain and simple, and it was also plain and simple that when Carson Wentz came out of North Dakota State playing for Chris Kleiman back in the day, that it was very plain and simple that he had enough ability to be picked second overall in the draft. And if he doesn't wreck his knee in 2017 against the Rams, who knows? So for Carson Wentz and Andy Reid, they're carrying the banner today, plain and simple. We can read all these names off. The Chiefs have come here to win and spoil the party.
And the Broncos are a young team with a rookie quarterback playing a playoff game here today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure on Denver. We'll see how they handle it.
Well, the fact that they had a chance to wrap this up, and they haven't wrapped it up. And now it's at the point where if you don't wrap it up today, you ain't wrapping it up. And then I told you about the historical disadvantage or the historical pressure. Let me add another one. The Broncos this year, they've had a good year. This isn't to cast aspersions on them, but they are 2-7 against teams that have records of 500 or better. They are 7-0 against teams with losing records. Now, even though this won't be a Chiefs team at full strength, it will give them some kind of schmaz to take in to the playoffs, because teams that have had 250 win percentages since 2020, there have been 7 of them, have not won a playoff game. So they don't want to go in limping into the playoffs. They want to make a statement here. So there's way more on the line in this game than meets the eye. And it must have intrigued a lot of you, because the Defending the Kingdom podcast,
yeah, we
the numbers that listen, they're like
50,000 listens this week.
It's week
pretty
18,
good.
but we're going, wait a minute, there's more here than meets the eye. And that's what we're trying to tell people today. But the Chiefs have come here to win the game. Just get that out of your mind if they come in here to just kind of slop around.
And it's also such a great opportunity for the young guys that are going to play today because you can't simulate a playoff atmosphere. And for guys like C.J. Hansen or Jaden Hicks or Hunter Norzad, Carson Steele, they're all playing in a playoff game today because the opponent's treating it like a playoff game. You can't simulate that experience.
No, and even some of the veterans like Charles Amenahu, he was the guy that stripped the ball from Easton Stick that led to the 97-yard scoop and score. Or Felix Anudike-Uzama, because FAU today gets to play the role of a Mike Dana or a George Karlaftis.
Sure.
Instead of being complimentary, you're the guy. Now, can you put pressure on Bo Nix? Can you protect and do your run fits? You got to protect against the Bo Nix runs. How will Felix handle that as being the guy? It's very much like Jaden Hicks.
I've never seen you more excited, aside from the Super Bowl wins, than when we won last year against the Chargers in Week 18. Awesome opportunity for the Chiefs here today. Doesn't mean a whole lot in the standings. I get that, but it's a great chance for some young players to get some experience out there, and maybe we'll spoil the Denver Broncos party along the way. For Mitch Holthus, I'm Matt McMullen. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Let's go get a victory.